that keys are to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. I want to talk about big contract decisions. And I know the season's not over, and I'm definitely not ready to completely turn the page on the season. I still want to enjoy some 49ers football, and there's still 3 games left to enjoy, and I'm still going to talk about them. But I do want to talk about a little bit about what people have been asking me and wanting to talk about, and that is some of the 49ers' big decisions that are coming their way. Because as this season has unfolded, it has not unfolded the way that anyone wanted, whether that was the front office, that is the 49ers coaches or players or even fans. Nobody foresaw the San Francisco 49ers being 6-8 and struggling this season, be it under 500. If you'd have told me this team was close to 500, a game or two over, I probably would have said that wasn't crazy to think. They handled the NFC West. They went ahead and won a lot of key games, but they lost some games they shouldn't have lost. I'd have been like, you know what? Yeah, that's possible. It's tough to win football games in the NFL. The problem is when you're losing to your own division, when you're 1-4 in your division and you still got one left and you haven't been good at all, you've basically put yourself in that situation that you're now having to overcome a deficit. And the 49ers can't overcome the deficit and make the playoffs. Now, I know it's not mathematically out of the equation that they could make it, but that loss to the Los Angeles Rams was so huge. It was just a complete devastation for the 49ers season. Now, I fully expect the 49ers coaches and players to go out there and compete at the highest of levels over the next 3 games because they have too much pride. They have too much respect for themselves to let it go out this way. They could still finish with a 500 record. So, I'm sorry, with a over 500 record. And I think that's exactly what the 49ers wish to do this season. And they're going to have some tough games. They're going to have some opportunities to play spoiler a little bit. Now, Miami, that's their next matchup. They're still in the mix a little bit. But they're also on the outside looking in, and it's not looking good for Miami. How desperate is Miami going to be to get a win? Then you look at the Detroit Lions. Well, they could be very desperate to get a win. And they are just stricken by injuries. How are they going to be able to hold on? That's going to be an interesting game in a couple weeks on Monday Night Football. And then, of course, Week 18, it could mean everything for Arizona. They're still in the mix. They have a chance to make the playoffs. They're a game ahead of the San Francisco 49ers with a chance to go in and potentially make the playoffs if they win the right games. So there's some meaningful games that the 49ers can play spoiler for. I like playing spoiler. And I think the 49ers do as well. So that's going to be something the 49ers want to figure out is what they're going to do this season. And we're going to have plenty of time to talk about that. But how about the news about the big contracts that could be coming down the 49ers lane? One of those, including Brock Purdy's contract, which we're starting to get some clarity on, but that's going to be one of the main focal points. And if you look at my poll over on my membership, that was one of the things people thought was a top priority for the San Francisco 49ers. Was that contract for Brock Purdy. So we're going to talk about that in a second. We're also going to talk about some other contracts and just some things going on with the 49ers this week as they look to prepare for a game, but also we start kind of looking ahead at what is to be after this season has concluded. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC, head to Bet Online today. And don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online. The game starts here. So the report comes out, of course, from Diana Rossini, where she was talking about the fact that, the 49ers season is lost. but there's a lot of decisions to be made about Brock Purdy, and then, of course, about what happens with Kyle Shanahan. And I think that's where the Brock Purdy conversation has to start, is Kyle Shanahan. And there's a lot of people calling for Kyle Shanahan to lose his job. A lot of people think that the 49ers underperformed, that he hasn't reached expectations, and that he should be moved on from. And so this is one of those interesting situations, and I've given a full, more detailed response of this on the Ant Hill Show. It's available over on Patreon. But as far as when it comes to Kyle Shanahan, I don't really understand why people would wish for him to be traded. That was, some people were saying that last week about him going to Chicago or him be fired. I understand that the 49ers have fallen short of the ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl. But it is also my understanding that one of the main things you do as a head coach is keep your team legitimate and give them the opportunity to win. And the one thing I can say about Kyle Shanahan, since he's gotten here, he's built a team with John Lynch that is competitive year in and year out. There's always the opportunity for the 49ers to go deep in the playoffs and potentially get to a Super Bowl. That's the expectation I think that Jed York has for this football team. Now, fans, we might have a different expectation. I think for me, my expectation is that the 49ers stay competitive. Now, it's very frustrating they don't win a Super Bowl, but I'm okay with the 49ers continuing to put out teams that are going to get the 49ers to the Super Bowl, because it's inevitable that you're going to eventually get over the hump. It's just a matter of time. Now, it's very difficult. You have to have a lot of patience, and I think patience is not something 49er fans have right now, because the 49ers haven't won a Super Bowl since 1994. But Kyle Shanahan is not the reason the 49ers haven't won a Super Bowl since 1994. He's only the reason the 49ers haven't won a Super Bowl since 2019. But we can't hold the long years of waiting against Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan has only been here since 2017. But I say 2019 being the first time that he's really responsible, because that's the year they turned this thing into a Super Bowl contender. Now, they told Jed York before that actually they thought it would be 2020 was the first time they could contend. So they got there a year ahead of schedule. Did they win in 2019? No, they fell short. But you know what? They went back to the NFC Championship game in 2021, 2022, and 2023. And last year in 2023, they went all the way to the Super Bowl. And I get it, but it's not Super Bowl or bust. That's just not how it can be. If you've got a top 5 coach in the league, you stick with them. And it's not going to all be rainbows and butterflies. And you're not always going to make it to NFC Championship games every single season. And I can remember times when 49ers fell short, when the team didn't live up to expectation. But I want you to think about this. In 1983, the San Francisco 49ers lost to the Washington Redskins in the NFC Championship game, and the Redskins went on to win the Super Bowl. The 49ers felt they were robbed. They did not reach expectations. They came up short. There weren't any conversations from fans about firing Bill Walsh, and that's a good thing, because the 49ers the next season went and won a Super Bowl under Bill Walsh. In 1987, the 49ers lost in the divisional round to the Minnesota Vikings in what was a very embarrassing game for the 49ers franchise and for Bill Walsh. And whether Eddie DeBartolo wanted to fire Bill Walsh or not, it really shouldn't have been a conversation point. And you know what the 49ers did in 1998 or 1988? They went 10-6 and they won a Super Bowl. It's a thing that, yes, Kyle Shanahan hasn't won in the Super Bowl, but you can't really look at those situations where you don't live up to expectation and say those are reasons for firing. Because expectations are what? To win a Super Bowl every year or to get a Super Bowl is lofty. And I'm not going to sit here and act like if the 49ers won a Super Bowl that we would never hold Kyle not winning another one against him. Of course, when it got to 2-3 years out, if you hadn't won one, the pressure would be on again. But what we do know is this fan base pressure on Kyle Shanahan is not the fan base or not the pressure that they're going to get from Coach Shanahan from Jed York. And Diana Rossini has said that they are definitely not thinking of moving on from Kyle Shanahan. And I think that is the normal response from front office, because you don't move on when you have one of the top 5 at anything. If you're a top 5 coach, you hold on to him. If you're a top 5 player at your position, you hold on to him. You don't want to move on from those guys because it's hard enough getting another one. And if anything is more clear than that, it's the 49ers, once they got past Bill Walsh and George Seifert, really didn't have another top 5 NFL coach until Jim Harbaugh. And that was a long stretch. And then Harbaugh was gone, and we went through a couple more coaches. Then we got Kyle Shanahan. And so it's not as easy as just saying, hey, we're going to pluck and play another offensive coordinator and they're going to have the same success, because that does not determine how a offensive coordinator is going to run a room, how they're going to handle a organization, what kind of culture are they going to establish. And so I think that now that you know that I think that Kyle Shanahan is going to stay, and I'm guessing most of you listening to this believe Kyle Shanahan is going to stay as well, then you can determine who you tie next to him. And Tom Pelissero came out and he said, hey, Brock Purdy is not going to take less money to stay in San Francisco, basically insinuating it needed to be north of $50 million per season for Brock Purdy to stay. And a lot of people have been expecting Brock Purdy to take less money because he's a good guy. He's a good individual. He's team first. And I think that's a normal thought process that every single fan wants. They want the player to take less, help their football team out. They want them to take the hometown discount just to be a good guy and help the team along. But these are also businessmen who are putting their lives on the line for generational wealth. They've had an opportunity now to change not just the life of themselves, their wives, their kids, but also their entire family. And so Brock Purdy is going to do what's right by his family. Now, I don't know if that means Brock Purdy's going to go into that room or tell his agent, hey, I want the absolute most money you could possibly get. Or if he says, hey, you talk to them, let's see what they're comfortable with, and then ask them what they're comfortable building around, where he gets a number that works really well for him, that still pays him as one of the top quarterbacks in the league, but leaves a little bit of wiggle room through the years to be able to build a good football team around him. I think that is within reason. But if he decides that he wants to just take $65 million, $60 million, and the 49ers are willing to pay it, I have no problems with Brock Purdy doing that. It's his money. He can do whatever he wants. If someone's willing to pay you $60 million, you're worth $60 million to that team. So that's what you're going to get. So if he wants to take less to build a team around him, I'm all for it. That's his prerogative. If he doesn't, well, that's on him. But the 49ers are going to set a number for Brock Purdy. And the fact that his agent came out and said north of $50 million means that agent has a pretty good idea of what the 49ers number is. Now, of course, they're not negotiating this contract until after the season because that's the first time they're able to work numbers with Brock Purdy. It'll be after his 3rd season in the league. So now that he's accrued 3 seasons, or will here pretty soon, they can start talking numbers. The fact he started at 50 probably means the 49ers are just south of 50, because you don't start at 50 and tell everyone, hey, we want to go up north of 50 if the number was already supposed to be higher. You would have started with 55 or 60. So 49ers right now are probably south of 50, or at least that's what they believe. And the agent is saying, hey, we're going to have to get north of 50 for this to be a real conversation. The fact that that is out there and the number is north of 50 and not $60 million or top of the line, I think says it goes a long way. So Diana Rossini says, I've been told the 49ers are still planning to negotiate a multi-year contract extension with Brock Purdy this offseason. So they are very comfortable with Brock Purdy being their quarterback. So $50 to $60 million is a lot of money to be paying a quarterback, especially when you have, big time weapons that you've just paid in Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk, as well as Trent Williams, and you restructured a contract of Deebo Samuel. So there's a lot of money there, but they have been working out money. They freed up a lot of money this season that they can roll over. That's number one. Number two, the salary cap is going to continue to rise in 2025, and the 49ers have created some cap space in 2025 already with contract restructures of Deebo Samuel and with Javon Hargrave. So they have continued to make this possible to get it done. So let's go over exactly what Tom Pelissero told Rich Eisen on the Rich Eisen podcast. He said, with Brock Purdy, I think you have to look at it in an aggregate here. In his short career, because he took over as a 7th-round pick and took over late in 2022 season. He's already got 13 games with 120 passer rating, which is the most of any player over their first 3 seasons here. The efficiency numbers are really strong on him, and he's been a part of 4 playoff wins. If a deal is going to get done, I would anticipate it is at the top of the quarterback market for all the reasons that I just said. Right now, Dak Prescott number is $60 million per year. Are the 49ers willing to go that, or are they going to be in a situation where you could have a standoff with your starting quarterback into the offseason here? Pelissaro also dismissed the notion Purdy would take a sub-market deal. Basically, he would take less money to be able to get on there. So he's saying no. He's saying it's going to be 60, but he's saying, hey, I don't think it's going to be, we're going to make you the 10th highest paid quarterback, and Brock Purdy's just going to be like, all right, where do I sign? It's going to be top of the market, which top of the market is $60 million. Now, I do know that John Lynch, like I said, him and Parag Marathi, they're going to get a number that works for them, and they're going to stick to that number. Brandon Ayuk stayed basically going at the 49ers and held out as long as he could, trying to get a little bit of extra coin out of them. The 49ers met him and went a long way in trying to meet his expectations, and they're going to do the same thing for Brock Purdy. But the 49ers front office knows they can't have their starting quarterback holding out as long as Brandon Ayuk or Trent Williams did. And really, Brandon Ayuk held up the Trent Williams deal a lot because of the financials of that. And so they're going to want to get this deal done. Now, Mark Adams, we do the Red and Bold show every week. He talks about the fact that he expects this deal to get done sooner rather than later, that the 49ers won't hesitate as soon as they're able to get Brock Purdy locked up. And I tend to agree with that summation because the 49ers know they can get a deal done with Brock. They know what they've got to spend after that. I'm sure Parag Marathi's been working on the structure of what a contract with Brock Purdy would look like, that they have an idea of what the years would look like, how the money's going to be spread out amongst those years, where the natural outs are in those contracts that you can be able to get out. And Parag Marathi does that better than anyone. That way you have restructuring points. And we've seen contracts work out pretty well when you're looking at a contract for Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes, where they've been able to consistently restructure those contracts as the times come up and defer that money and push it down the road so that way they can stay competitive. Also, some really low cap number years help this team tremendously. So I think the 49ers are going to have a very shrewd, very strategic contract for Brock Purdy. I do believe it's probably going to be at or north of $55 million per year. So that's where you have to make your decision. If you are a fan, would you be willing to pay Brock Purdy $55 million to be your starting quarterback? I would say there's probably some that think that's a great idea. Let's go ahead, lock him up. He's our franchise guy. We're a better football team with Brock Purdy. And then I guess there's probably a segment of the fan base that thinks that that's too much, that the 49ers should go ahead and sign somebody else for less money, draft an heir apparent, but who would that guy be that you would bring in? Would people be willing to bring in Kirk Cousins? Would they be willing to bring back Sam Darnold and pay him $28 million a year and save a tremendous amount of cash? Potentially. So the 49ers fans, I'm curious what you think. Would you be willing to pay Brock Purdy $55 million to play for your football team? And part of the reason that this is interesting, and we know the 49ers have been looking for a franchise quarterback for a long time. They have not been able to latch onto a franchise quarterback since Steve Young. I get it. Jeff Garcia played well. We're very happy for Garcia and the things that he did here, but he was not a franchise quarterback. Alex Smith was supposed to be a franchise quarterback. He was not. Colin Kaepernick was not a franchise quarterback, not here long enough. The 49ers thought maybe Jimmy Garoppolo would be the franchise quarterback. That fizzled out. So Brock Purdy is that guy that could be a franchise quarterback for the 49ers. Been able to consistently win. They've made it to an NFC Championship game twice and a Super Bowl with him at the helm. And in overtime of the Super Bowl last season, he walked off the field with the lead. I think that really does display the importance of having a player of Brock Purdy's caliber on your football team. But you might also have some other question marks. And you probably looked at the thumbnail about big contract decisions. And Brock Purdy's contract is going to affect so many players on this football team. Because guess what? $60 million per year. And that might restrict you from getting a couple of the guys you were normally going to be able to. You get that contract to $50 million. All of a sudden, you can sign 2, 3, 4 players, depending on what positions they're at. And the 49ers have to make decisions on defense at a couple of positions. One of those being Dre Greenlaw. And Greenlaw, of course, was dealing with the knee soreness last week. But come off an Achilles, he looked fantastic. In fact, he was the second highest graded player in that football game on defense. The only one better than him was Fred Warner, who was a 92.1, according to PFF. Dre Greenlaw, 87.6. And the defense just played phenomenal, including in the run game with Dre Greenlaw out there. Dre Greenlaw is a difference maker. And of course, for the 49ers, you have to find out, can Greenlaw still go? That was the big question mark since he got hurt in the Super Bowl last year, was he's going into a contract year. What is he going to look like? Is it still going to be the same Dre? He's still going to be able to cover running backs and tight ends. He's still going to be able to attack the way he could. Does he still have that explosiveness? Well, I can't say for sure he has the same explosiveness because he's not even 12 months past the injury. But what I can say, he's still a pretty darn good football player. And you need to bring Dre Greenlaw back. So the 49ers got to figure out how to come up with money for Dre Greenlaw. And that's where it gets tough because you have a lot of financial responsibilities to several players. But the 49ers, when motivated, have found ways to bring back players. And I think this should be motivation enough. I think when it comes to offense, Brock Purdy is priority number 1. I think when it comes to defense, Dre Greenlaw is priority number 1. Because when you really look at the 49ers defense and the makeup and how it's built, you have Nick Bosa under contract for the foreseeable future. In 2025, you have Leonard Floyd, Yetur Gross-Matos, Malik Collins, Javon Hargrave, all under contract. And a lot of people are going to say Javon Hargrave should be a post-June 1 cut. I'm not going to sit here and argue that at this time. What I am going to say is as of right now, he's under contract. And as Kyle Shanahan stated, he's expected to play for the 49ers in 2025. So if you don't move on from him and to free up some extra money, you still have him under contract. You don't really have to build the defensive line a whole lot. Do you bring back a Jordan Elliott? You have Evan Anderson stepping up, Kalia Davis getting a little bit better. Could you bring in some guys in the draft and maybe a first-round pick in the draft, a defensive tackle, and you're set to go? That could potentially change some things. But linebacker's the number 1 with Dre Greenlaw because Fred Warner plays better with Dre on the field, and Dre plays better with Fred on the field. They're a dynamic duo. Getting them out there together is highly important. But it's not just that Dre makes Fred better, but those two guys together make the entire defense better. Now you can stop the run with 7 guys in the box. Now you can play light boxes in nickel and play 6-man boxes because Fred and Greenlaw can handle everything. They can cover, they can run, they can tackle. It's just the perfect grouping. So he has to be priority number 1. And we know this will be his 3rd contract. He had his rookie contract, then he signed a 2-year extension that the 49ers got on a very favorable deal. And now you're going to have an opportunity to get another favorable deal because even though you have to pay Dre Greenlaw, he's also coming off an Achilles injury. Nobody's going to know how healthy Dre Greenlaw is to the level of the San Francisco 49ers. Now, just listening to John Lynch talk, Charvarius Ward, De'Amara Lenore, the guys who said, hey, we know how much he means to this football team, and he's the heartbeat of this defense. And I think that him and Fred feeding off each other, it's definitely true. The 49ers got to be willing to pay a premium. And I'm not saying go break the bank on Dre Greenlaw, but bringing him back should be a priority. But what's that going to cost you? Well, Azeez Al-Shire signed a $10 million deal last year. You might have to pay Dre Greenlaw $10 million a year or more. And the question is, are you willing to do that? I think after watching that game, and we'll see, hopefully he'll play a little bit more this season. I think it's important for Dre to play some more so you can completely evaluate. I think he's worth that money. He makes this defense supremely better. And so I think that's going to be one of the key additions for the 49ers is going to be bringing back Dre Greenlaw and making sure you sign him to a contract. And I think it's going to have to be double digits per season. And is that too rich? I mean, that's what I want to know from you guys. Do you think that's too rich for the 49ers to bring Dre Greenlaw back at 10 plus million per season? Well, I think the way that they work out that contract, I think they need to get it done. Decision needs to be made there, and I think that's one that they can definitely make. The other position, I think it's becoming clear and evident the 49ers need to re-sign this player as Talanoa Hufanga. I think if ever there was a season that it was very much clear you need Talanoa Hufanga on your defense, it's this one. And it's crazy because we recognized last season that when Hufanga went out after the Tampa Bay game, that the 49ers run defense got a lot worse, especially on the edges. Teams were able to handle the 49ers pretty extensively on the edge and create some problems, whether that was Aaron Jones in the divisional round of the playoffs or Montgomery and Gibbs in the NFC Championship game. They were gashing. Jamison Williams took the counter play around the edge for a touchdown at the first touchdown of the game. It was just a real problem with the alley defender. Talanoa Hufanga comes in and steps right in. It's like he's back to normal. Got the club on, but he can still tackle. He's one of the leading tacklers in the game. He's attention to detail, making sure everyone's lined up correctly is pretty good. And you just got a different sense from that defense when Talanoa Hufanga was out there. More comfortable, so more calm. And clear, the 49ers need to bring him back. Jair Brown, I'm not willing to give up on the guy yet, but he definitely hasn't proven that he's ready to go and ready to take on that role. But we're sitting here last season, off season, Hufanga's probably gone. Greenlaw, maybe D. Winters takes over. Financially, the 49ers just can't afford it to. We got to bring these guys back. We got to bring back Dre Greenlaw. We've got to bring back Talanoa Hufanga. So then you start thinking, these big contract decisions, are they even decisions at all? Is it even a decision for the San Francisco 49ers front office and coaching staff to bring back these three players? To lock up Brock Purdy, to lock up Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw? I don't think it is. I think these are foregone conclusions that the 49ers front office has already arrived at. We need to bring these guys back. They are the reasons that we're able to be the team that we can be. And the truth is, we never really saw the full strength of what the 2024 San Francisco 49ers defense could be. They were never full strength. They were never able to get their starting lineup that they thought they were going to get. Nick Bosa, Malik Collins, Javon Hargrave, and Leonard Floyd. Linebacker Dre Greenlaw, D. Winters, and Fred Warner. Cornerback Charvarius Ward and Deommodore Lenoir and Renardo Green stepping in with Talanoa Hufanga, and thought it was going to be Jair Brown. But Malik Mustafa passed him. And I know there's still a decision to be made there when it comes to Charvarius Ward, but I think the 49ers actually already made it. I think they decided to go with Deommodore Lenoir when they signed him to a contract extension a few weeks ago. So that's why I didn't really talk about that one, because I do think Renardo Green stepping up made it a little bit different as far as the chances of Charvarius Ward coming back. I don't think Charvarius Ward will come back. So coming into the season, your decisions were, do we bring back Hufanga? Do we bring back Dre Greenlaw? And do we bring back Lenoir or Charvarius Ward? That decision's been made. But the other two, I think, have been made as well. You need to. You need to bring him back. Can you financially do it? One other position I want to talk about financially, or actually two. Aaron Banks. I do not expect the 49ers to re-sign Aaron Banks at left guard. Financially, I don't think it's very shrewd. But also, I think they can upgrade the position, whether in the draft or through free agency or even a player on their football team. Ben Barch, Spencer Burford. Low-cost players who could come in and compete. And I know fans want to see the 49ers definitely improve at the position, and they can still do that. I just think the 49ers are going to make a decision there in a different direction. And then running back. You've got a lot of money tied up into Christian McCaffrey. You've got a young player in Isaac Rendo. That's great. But you've got to make a decision on Jordan Mason. And I think this will be a foregone conclusion for most people. Bring Jordan Mason back. But I look at it from the business standpoint. Is he's going to be a restricted free agent. Because he's going to be a restricted free agent, you need to put a tender on him. And if you put a original round tender, he was an undrafted free agent, that's the equivalent of a 7th round pick. Are you just going to let someone sign him away for a 7th round pick? Doesn't seem very smart. You got to put a second round tender on him. If you do, minus you trading him, you're going to have to pay him over $4 million per season or for that season. Does that make sense? Could you sign him to an extension? Well, that 49ers are going to have to make that decision. I think this is another one that the 49ers have to make. Do we bring back Jordan Mason? Do we trade Jordan Mason? That's going to be interesting. And if you bring him back, is it a restricted free agent deal that you sign with him, a second round tender, or are you signing him to an extension? So that's one of the big ones I'm interested. But it all starts with Brock Purdy. Then it filters through Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, then on over to the offense where you have to make decisions on Aaron Banks and with Jordan Mason. So it's going to be a lot of interesting conversation. Still going to talk about 49ers this week in their game preparation, 49ers versus Miami Dolphins. So we'll be getting into that some this week as well. I appreciate you guys all for joining me. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.